Story 1. My name is Ashley, and at the time of this event, I was 28 years old. I have always been an animal lover, which led me to a career as a veterinary assistant. On the side, I also did house sitting for people who needed someone to watch their pets while they were away. I had taken care of everything from cats and dogs to reptiles and birds. Since I already worked at a veterinary hospital, people felt comfortable hiring me, knowing I was experienced and trustworthy. One day, I got a response to my ad from a man named Jerry. He needed someone to watch his macaw and cat for the weekend while he was out of town. He immediately offered $300 for the job, which I accepted since it was a fair price. I had experience with birds, including macaws, but this would be my first time watching one for an entire weekend. I met Jerry at his house, a typical suburban corner home. He was a short man, probably in his late 50s, with graying hair and a mustache. He seemed friendly, which wasn't surprising. Most animal lovers are. He introduced me to his macaw, Ringo, and his cat, Casper. Ringo was massive, but I was used to handling large birds. Jerry explained Ringo's personality, his quirks, and how to calm him down if he got noisy. The bird kept repeating, "Daddy's home," whenever Jerry interacted with him. Jerry laughed and said it was just something Ringo always said when he saw him. The bird also knew a few other short phrases. After giving me instructions on feeding Casper and cleaning Ringo's cage, Jerry showed me around the house. He asked that I only go into the guest bedroom, where I would be staying, and the bathroom next to it. That seemed reasonable. He also told me to help myself to anything in the kitchen, though I had brought my own food since I was vegan. After we talked for a bit, he handed me the key, then left. I watched from the window as he drove away, leaving me alone with the pets. By then, it was already late, around 8 p.m. The house was quiet, and Casper had disappeared somewhere to nap. I turned on the TV in the living room, right next to Ringo's cage, and settled in. Ringo sat on his perch, watching me. After a while, I ate my dinner and went to bed, leaving the bedroom door open. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to a noise, two loud cracking sounds. I sat up and listened but heard nothing else, so I went back to sleep. I figured it was just Ringo moving around in his cage. The next day was uneventful. I fed the pets, cleaned up, and let Ringo out to stretch his wings. He perched behind me on the couch while I watched TV. Later in the afternoon, I went for a walk, FaceTimed some friends, and grabbed dinner before heading back. That evening, I interacted with the pets, watched more TV, then went to bed early again. Like the night before, I left the door open. This time, I woke up to the sound of the bedroom door closing. That was strange. The windows were open, but there was barely any breeze to cause a draft. I also heard noises downstairs, Ringo moving around and talking. I got up to check on him. As I walked down the stairs, I heard him more clearly. When I reached his cage, he was pacing and muttering. I reached for a treat to calm him down when he suddenly said, "Daddy's home." That unsettled me. It was the middle of the night. I gave Ringo the treat, which quieted him, but I could not shake the eerie feeling. I went back upstairs, left the door open again, and tried to sleep. Not long after, I woke up a third time. This time, I was not sure what had woken me, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something. A dark figure moving away from my bed and out the door. My heart pounded. I almost screamed, but then I hesitated. Was I dreaming? Hallucinating? I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. That was when I noticed a text message from Jerry. It had been sent about an hour earlier. It read, "If Ringo makes noise in the middle of the night, it's normal. Just ignore it." I stared at the message, rereading it over and over. He had sent it right around the time I had gone downstairs to check on Ringo. A wave of nausea hit me. The figure in my room, was it real? I threw my things into my bag as fast as I could. I grabbed my toiletries from the bathroom and was about to leave when I heard something. A faint noise coming from one of the other bedrooms. Something about it pulled me in. Against my better judgment, I crept down the hall to what I assumed was the master bedroom. I put my ear to the door and heard a rhythmic creaking sound. It sounded like a bed rocking. My breath caught in my throat. I knocked on the door. "Jerry, are you in there?" The noise stopped instantly. Silence. I knocked again, louder this time. If someone is in there, I need to know right now before I leave. Nothing. I turned and bolted down the stairs. I left the key on the kitchen table and walked out without looking back. Once I was in my car, I sent Jerry a long voice message. I told him I was seriously considering calling the police for trespassing or stalking and that I was disturbed by what had happened. My phone lit up immediately. He called 3 times, but I did not answer. Then he sent a text. Sorry, my brother unexpectedly came home last night. Bullshit. I demanded he send my payment immediately, and he did. That was the last time I ever heard from him. I hate to even mention this last part, but the next day, I realized something. A certain piece of clothing was missing from my bag, something I knew I had packed. I do not even want to think about it. This is the first and last time I will ever retell this story in full. Story 2. My name is Lauren, and I was 17 years old when this happened. I am 5'3", and my 2 friends, Jessica and Megan, are 5'8" and 5'7", respectively. It was March 19, 2016, and I was dog-sitting for my mom's friend to make some extra money before heading off to college. The family had a really nice sunroom, which my friends and I liked to hang out in, so I invited Jessica and Megan over to keep me company and make the night more enjoyable. Jessica was 23, and Megan was 22. They brought some vodka with them, and we spent a few hours drinking, smoking, laughing, and catching up. Then the phone started ringing. At first, we thought nothing of it, but after the 4th or 5th time, it started to get weird. The phone in the house was supposed to be disconnected. We figured maybe it was a mistake, but the calls kept coming, nonstop. Finally, Megan picked up. On the other end, a man claimed he had the homeowner's wallet and that we needed to come pick it up from a gas station 25 minutes away. That made no sense. The family was out of town. Why would their wallet be at some random gas station? The man insisted we come right away, saying it was urgent. Megan kept telling him we would get it in the morning, but he would not take no for an answer. Finally, she hung up. We all had a bad feeling in our stomachs. Trying to shake the eerie vibe, we grabbed the dog, Willis, and locked ourselves in the back bedroom, pulling all the blinds shut. We knew we were a little paranoid, but we had been drinking and smoking, so we convinced ourselves we were just overreacting. Maybe the guy really was just trying to return a lost wallet. Hours passed, and we tried to relax by watching a funny movie and making some food. We moved from the sunroom into the living room. The sunroom was in between the kitchen and living room, leading to the backyard with a pool. The door between the pool and sunroom had no lock, but the one leading to the kitchen and living room did. Since Willis needed to go outside to do his business, we decided to leave that door open. We reassured ourselves that we were in a safe neighborhood, and if anything happened, Willis would bark. Around 3 in the morning, I got the overwhelming sense that someone was watching us. My skin crawled. I turned toward the kitchen and saw a dark figure crouched near the cabinets. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then, I watched as the figure reached up and opened a cabinet door. My stomach dropped. I nudged Jessica and whispered, "Jessica, I think someone is in the house." She followed my gaze, and the moment she saw him, she screamed. The figure turned his head sharply and locked eyes with me. All I can see were piercing blue eyes contrasting against the dim orange glow of the cabinet light. He was dressed entirely in black, hoodie, pants, shoes, gloves. He even wore a ski mask that covered everything except his eyes. Megan shot up and yelled, "Get the hell out." The man didn't run. He didn't panic. He simply closed the cabinet door, turned, and walked calmly out the sunroom door. We bolted to the farthest corner of the room and called 911. The police arrived in 3 minutes, searching the entire house and taking our statements. They stayed parked outside for the rest of the night to see if the intruder would return. We did not stick around to find out. We left immediately, leaving behind our drinks, my car, and even Willis with the cops. The next day, we went back to get my car and the dog. When we walked inside, the house felt different. Clothes were scattered everywhere, and there were crumbs near the doggy door. Willis had not barked once during the break-in. To this day, we still have no idea who called us, who entered that house, or how long he had been watching us before we noticed him. I have never been back since. Story 3. Back when I was in college, I used to house sit for a family every year when they went on their annual vacation. I had done it for a few years, and while I had a handful of creepy experiences, nothing had ever been bad enough to make me quit, until one night changed everything. I was in my 20s, juggling a bunch of side jobs to make ends meet, and house sitting was a pretty easy gig. This particular family was going on a 2-week trip overseas and would be completely out of touch. If anything happened, I would have to either call the police or contact one of their relatives. I had already experienced a few unsettling things in their house before, but they paid me well, so I ignored my unease. They had 4 cats, all well-behaved, and since I worked at an animal shelter, I was familiar with cat behavior. For the first few days, everything was normal. I slept in the guest bedroom and went about my routine, even using their house as a convenient place to stay since it was close to campus. Then, things took a turn. One evening, my boyfriend at the time brought over dinner and stayed to keep me company. He knew I always felt a little uneasy in that house, so we ate, watched TV for a while, and just hung out. At some point, he checked the time and said he needed to head home. Normally, he would have stayed over, but that night, he said he had a really bad gut feeling that he should sleep at his own place. He urged me to leave with him, but I refused. I had a complicated home life and barely got any time away from my family. This house-sitting job was my one chance a year to get some peace. I did not want to waste it. He kept insisting, telling me something just felt wrong. He had stayed over plenty of times before, but that night, something about the house unsettled him. I shrugged it off, reminding him that the house had a security system, the neighborhood was safe, and I had 4 cats with me. Reluctantly, he left. That was when it started. After locking up, I got comfortable in bed. Out of nowhere, the TV switched on by itself. I assumed I had accidentally sat on the remote, but when I looked over, it was sitting untouched on the nightstand. Weirded out, I turned the TV off. A second later, it turned itself back on. This time, the screen was just static, black and white, like it had no signal. My heart started to race as I kept turning it off, only for it to turn itself back on again and again. Finally, I yanked the plug out of the wall. The room fell silent. I tried to rationalize it, maybe some wiring issues from the recent renovations. Even though I felt uneasy, I still did not want to go home, so I grabbed a blanket and went to sleep on the couch instead. The next day, my boyfriend came over again. I told him what had happened, and he looked at me like I was crazy for staying. We had dinner together and decided to watch a movie in the living room. Now, to explain the house's layout, there were 2 floors, but the second floor was actually the basement. The main entrance led into the living room, which connected to both the kitchen and a hallway leading to the bedrooms. The basement was a large living area with an extra bedroom, and the stairs leading down were creaky as hell. The owners had renovated the whole place, but for some reason, they never fixed those stairs. As we sat watching the movie, we both froze. From the basement, we heard what sounded like an infant crying. My boyfriend turned to me, his face pale, silently asking if I heard it too. I remembered from my time working at the shelter that cats sometimes made sounds eerily similar to a baby crying, especially when they were stressed. Since the cats like to be near people but not held, I quickly counted them. Only 3 were in the room. The youngest, a 3-year-old, was missing. Figuring he had gotten himself stuck somewhere, I went downstairs. Sure enough, I found him in the spare bedroom, the door somehow shut behind him. He must have accidentally locked himself in. I scooped him up, brought him back upstairs, and we resumed the movie. Later that night, it was time to feed the cats. They had a strict feeding schedule, and their food was kept in the kitchen, the only area that led to both the basement and the living room. After eating, they always disappeared into the bedrooms to nap, just like they had every other year I had watched them. So, when we sat back down in the now empty kitchen to eat our own dinner, I did not think much of it. Then we heard it again. The crying was coming from the basement, but this time, it was different, louder, higher-pitched, more desperate. My boyfriend's face went pale. I tried to play it off, saying it must be the same cat again, but inside, I was panicking. I grabbed my phone, turned on the basement light, and cautiously walked down the stairs, calling the cat's name with each step. The crying got louder. My heart pounded in my chest. But the second I reached the bottom step, it stopped. The room was empty. I checked everywhere, under the couch, behind furniture, inside closets. No cat. The longer I stood there, the stronger the feeling of dread became. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then something in me snapped, and I bolted up the stairs like my life depended on it. When I reached the kitchen, I stopped cold. My boyfriend stood there, staring at something in horror. I followed his gaze. All 4 cats were in the kitchen, sitting around him. They had never been in the basement. Neither of us said a word. I grabbed my things, shoved them into my backpack, and we left that house immediately. For the rest of the week, I only returned once a day to feed the cats and clean their litter boxes. I did not care about sticking to their feeding schedule anymore. I just wanted to get in and out as fast as possible. On the last day, I locked up, left the keys where they had instructed, sent them a polite thank you message, and told them it would be my last time house sitting for them. Looking back, I should have quit sooner. Every year, the strange experiences had gotten worse, and I had ignored the signs. I called my sibling as I drove home, still shaken, and when I told them what had happened, they went quiet before admitting something that made my stomach drop. They had experienced something terrifying in that house too, and they had never told me because they knew I needed the money and they did not want to scare me away from earning it.